Chapter 15. Something Old, Something New. The Alban Farm, January 1758. In the fall, William and his sons seeded their fields with red winter wheat, and now the time has come to turn it under and prepare their fields for a new crop. And this year, William is intent on growing something he has never grown before, at least not in Virginia. It is, however, a crop he grew on Senior's farm in Ireland, the blessed potato. With so many Irish, English, Scottish, and German immigrants flooding the Shenandoah, he sees a golden opportunity. It is a significant risk, but if successful, could be a game changer. One risk is facing this challenge alone, as Mary is 7.5 months pregnant with their 5th child. The concern being he will be forced to leave her alone while traveling east to retrieve his seed potatoes. However, when the subject arose, Mary simply brushed it off, stating she had already delivered 4 children and that this one would be no different. William would love to cover his farm in potatoes, but that is far too big a risk. Not knowing how well the crop will do in the Shenandoah, his initial crop will cover a mere 60 acres and will require 516 bushels of seed potatoes. This will enable him to put his plan into motion without stretching his finances. He believes, with a little help, the 31,000 pounds of seed potatoes can be transported from the port to his farm with 4 wagons in 2 weeks' time. With 1 wagon of his own, he hopes to borrow the other 3. After asking around, his neighbor Henry Shepler offers to loan him one of his wagons, while his brother-in-law George promises to provide him with 2 more, each with a team of mules. In exchange, William will provide Shepler with a 3-month supply of meat and potatoes to be provided later. George, however, considering all William has done for his family, offers his wagons free of charge. With the 4 wagons secured, each with a capacity of 12,000 pounds, William and his team can transport the potatoes themselves without incurring additional shipping costs. With the wagons and mules secured, William recruits a team to join him on his journey. Among them are his sons John and Robert, along with his dear old friend and the boy's pseudo-grandfather, 66-year-old Bruce Bonner. Once planted and harvested, William will retain and store 2 potatoes for every one he plants and sell off the rest. Based on his previous experience with potatoes, he guesstimates he will be able to sell no less than 3 pounds for every pound he plants, while at the same time retain enough seed to plant 120 acres the following year. If successful, he will have 160 acres of potatoes growing by the 3rd year. And with his meat and business clientele, he believes he will be able to sell all his potatoes in the local community. After planting his red winter wheat the previous fall, William sent letters of inquiry in search of seed potatoes. In late November, he received a reply from a New Hampshire farmer, and by January 2nd they had brokered a deal. Upon reaching an accord, the farmer agreed to ship the bushels to the Great Hunting Creek port near modern-day Alexandria, Virginia, less than 10 miles from the plantation formerly known as Little Hunting Creek, or Mount Vernon. They will sail from New Hampshire down to the Chesapeake Bay and up the Potomac aboard the cargo ship Eleanor, arriving on or about Wednesday, February 8th. To meet their travel window, William determines he will need to depart for the port no later than Wednesday, February 1st, which means he has just a few weeks to finish turning and preparing the soil before heading east to meet up with the ship. The Alban Farm, Monday, January 30th, 1758. William, John, and Robert are in the barnyard preparing the 4 wagons with help from Henry and John Shipler when Flora Conley rides up on horseback. When he sees her, William stops working to greet her. "Flora, What brings you here on this chilly morn? I'm afraid I've some bad news. 'Tis me da. Your da, you say? Whatever do you mean? He's fallen ill, and 'tis no looking good. He removes his broad brim. Lord Almighty! Aye, and as much as it breaks me heart to say, I didna see him making the trip east. I'm sorry, William. I ken you were counting on him. No to worry, sis. We'll make do. What's important is getting him back to his grumpy old self. Oh, you're a good soul, William Bruce. Thank you. We'll do our best. Please, send him our well wishes. Oh, and tell him not to worry. We'll manage just fine. She smiles warmly from atop her steed. Thank you, William. I'll do that. And tell him we'll see him when we return. I will. You have me word. Safe travels, gents, she says as she turns to ride away. As she does, Henry comments, Looks like you're one short. William strokes his chin. So it would appear. Robert asks, Duh, what are we going to do? Before his father can respond, John Shipler chimes in with a raise of his hand. I can go. Our crops are dormant now anyways, and, if I'm being honest, I could use a good adventure. His father looks at him with a nod. That is true, son. Then he turns to William. William removes his broad brim and scratches his head before putting it back on. Are you sure, Henry? That's 2 weeks without your son to help around the farm. Henry pulls the pipe from his mouth. Actually, I thought we'd both go. William raises a brow. Like he said, our fields are dormant now anyway. Are you sure? Henry winks. I'm sure you'll make it worth our while. William shakes his hand. I'm sure we can reach an accord. With a tilt of his head, Henry gives his hand a squeeze. Double down on the meat and potatoes you promised me? William squeezes back. I believe we have an accord, Henry. Oh, and Junior will be here keeping an eye on things while we're gone. I'll see to it he checks in with your family as well. Henry nods. You're a good man, William. William flashes his signature smile. As are you, Henry. You got me hand just as I were falling from the cliff. Thank you. Henry chuckles. Anything for more of those delicious meats, my friend. The Albin Farm, Wednesday, February 1st, 1758. In the darkness before the dawn, William and his crew are making last-minute checks of their wagons and ensuring they have packed all that is needed for their long journey. Gathered in the barnyard are William's family and the Shiplers, John's wife Magdalena, and their 3 sons, 8-year-old Henry II, John Jr., and baby Absalom, along with their 3 daughters, 6-year-old Melinda, Elizabeth, and little Mary. They are gathered in a circle saying their goodbyes when James Bruce, his younger brother John, and their brother-in-law Richard Carter pull up in another wagon. James shouts, Looks like we got here just in time. William walks over to greet them. Top of the morning, gents. That's mighty kind of you to come see us off, especially at this hour. The 3 men exchange glances and Richard laughs. We're no here to see you off. We're going with you. James laughs. Aye, did you think we were going to let you have all the fun without us? I should think no. The Shepler men exchange a glance, then turn to William. He gives them a raised brow smile and a thumbs up. 3 more men in another wagon. What do you say, gents? Henry pulls the pipe from his lip and nods. The more the merrier, Mr. Mockwisser. His son nods. William turns to Richard and the Bruces. We'd love to have you, gents. Welcome to the Great Potato Adventure. Richard shakes his hand. Adventure indeed. John smacks William on the shoulder with a wink. And who dinna love an adventure? William steps back, hands on his hips. But what about your mills? James throws him a dismissive wave. Not to worry. George has everything well in hand. Richard adds, Aye, he practically pushed us out the door. John laughs. Practically me arse. William shakes his head. That sounds like Georgie. With that, he turns to the rest of the crew. So, are we ready? They all nod. Very well then. Mount up, gents. We've a long road ahead. While his son kisses his wife and children goodbye, Henry climbs onto his wagon. Meanwhile, Mary waddles over and kisses each of her sons. You lads be safe, and take care of your da for me. John nods. Don't worry, Ma. We will. Then he gives her a hug before climbing onto his wagon. Following his older brother's lead, Robert does the same. As he turns away, William wraps his arms around Mary's pregnant Scottish frame, kissing her tenderly. Don't worry, Mare Bear. I'll bring 'em home safe and sound. You have me word. I ken you will. Just come home quick as you can. He gives her one last kiss, then turns to the wagons. He sees that his sons are each manning a wagon of their own. Considering the Bruces and Carters packed onto one wagon, he offers a suggestion. As confident as I am in me sons, I'd feel a whole lot better if they had one of you gents riding along with them. What do you say? James peers over his shoulder at his brother and Richard. Go on, lads. I canna imagine having the both of you squawking in me ear for a fortnight. They exchange a look, then Richard jumps from the wagon. You didn't have to ask me twice. John gives his brother a playful shove before jumping from the wagon. Aye, I'd rather be riding with me nephew than your stinky arse anyway. William throws him a salute, then climbs on to the lead wagon, his horse tied off to the back. In the wagon behind him are the two Johns, followed by his son Robert and Richard Carter, with the Sheplers in the fourth wagon and James Bruce holding up the rear. With their families waving goodbye, William mushes his mules and the 5 wagons pull away. Slowly making their way east, they traverse the valley to the far end of Frederick County and Castleman's Ferry on the mighty Shenandoah River. The young man who operates the ferry is David Castleman. Castleman moved to the Shenandoah from Albany, New York in 1750 to join his father Andreas and older brother William Castleman, who had received land grants from Thomas VI Lord Fairfax in August of the previous year. Unfortunately, when they received their grants, their names were mistakenly written on the paperwork as Castleman, and so it remained thereafter. 2 years ago, David Castleman married Margaret Johnson, whose mother had descended from the prestigious Hampton family of Virginia, whom the city of Hampton, Virginia is named after. Historically speaking, David and Margaret's son, David Jr., will go on to operate the Castleman's ferry service until it is ultimately replaced by a bridge. When the bridge is built, it is named the Castleman's Ferry Bridge. That same bridge is still in use to this day. In 1772, David and Margaret Castleman purchased Glen Owen Farm from none other than George and Martha Washington. In 1864, during the Civil War, the ferry is the site of the Battle of Cool Spring and various other skirmishes between Mosby's Rangers and Union forces. With the recent rains, travel on the muddy Shenandoah roads proves to be slow at best. Taking them the better part of their first day to reach the river, they pull up to the ferry just before nightfall. But by William's calculations, they are right on schedule. He had taken the muddy conditions into account when drafting his plan, figuring they would not be able to travel more than 3 miles per hour under those conditions, despite the fact their wagons have the capacity to travel 2 to 3 times that speed. As they approach the ferry, the sky is already darkening, and as William approaches the launch, he sees it is roped off and there is no one in sight. Nevertheless, he pulls right up to it and brings the caravan to a halt. Jumping from his rig, he walks back to the two Johns. "This is as far as we go today, gents. Tend to your mules and we'll set up camp for the night." The two Johns nod, and William heads back to pass the word to the other wagons. As he approaches Richard Carter in the third wagon, he shouts, "We'll camp here for the night. Pull your rig alongside John's and tend to your mules." Richard throws him a hand salute. As Carter pulls his wagon forward, William moves on to the Sheplers. "Ferry's closed, gents. Pull your rig behind John's and we'll set up camp." Henry nods and waves, then gives the reins a gentle snap for his mules to pull forward. William steps aside and waves for James in the fifth wagon to pull alongside Richard's. "That's good, James. Whoa!" James brings his wagon to a halt and climbs down. As the crew dismount and stretch their legs, William barks out some orders and everyone gets to work. While the drivers walk their mules down to the river to be watered, the others scan the area gathering firewood. By the time the drivers have their mules tied off and fed, the rest of the crew has created a nice pile of wood and a roaring fire just off the river. With the fire blazing, the crew take a load off and warm themselves by its crackling flames. Save William and his sons, who moments later come walking up with baskets of food. "Who's hungry?" As they turn to their fearless leader, he continues, "Mary baked us some fresh loaves of bread and packed us some smoked meats and cheese." Henry takes one of the baskets from William with a smile. "That's just what I'm in need of." Robert hands one of the baskets to Richard Carter, who comments, "Ah, that Mary's a saint." Robert sets down the other basket and peeks inside. His face lights up, and he turns to the group. "And if that weren't enough, Ma sent fresh apple pies." His Uncle James stands, eyes big as saucers. "Did you say pie?" Robert nods. James makes a beeline for him, his mouth already salivating. "Oh, you to give me some of that. Mary's apple pie is me favourite." Robert pulls one of the pies from the basket with a Cheshire cat grin. "Aye, me too." Meanwhile, his brother John is peeking into the crate he and his father carried over. When he spies the contents, a pirate smile crosses his face and he looks up from the crate. "Ma's pies are the best, but I'd argue the good stuff's in here." As the men turn to him, he reaches in, hoisting 2 jugs of McGregor's finest from inside. The men cheer, "Hear, hear!" Gathered around the fire, they pass the food and drink, and for the next many minutes, all that is heard are the crackling fire, smacking lips, satisfied ahs, and the swiftly flowing Shenandoah. Chewing on a hearty sandwich, Henry breathes, That is some mighty fine ham." James, who is chomping on a sandwich of his own, comments, "Aye, William's meats are always the finest." Kneeling by the fire, William rubs his hands together. "For you, gents, nothing but the best." Changing the subject, Richard comments, "I must say, it took longer to get here than I expected." William takes a swig of hooch and wipes his mouth. "Actually, we're right on schedule." The men look at him bemused. "With all that rain we had last week, I figured the muddy roads would slow our pace. I'm just hoping they'll be dried out for the return trip, because moving loaded wagons through that muddy bog will make for a tricky ride." Henry swallows the last of his sandwich. "Not to worry. Safe, slow, and steady works just as well." The men cheer, "Hear, hear!" John pats his father's shoulder, gesturing with the hearty sandwich in the other. "Right you are. We'll get those totties home, come hell or high water." Chomping and lifting their glasses, the crew cheers, "Hear, hear!" "Or sore arses," Richard moans, rubbing his backside. "I dinna ken about you, but me bum's numb as a dead catfish." John Shepler shakes his right leg, laughing. "As is mine. All those hours on that cold bench did me in. At one point, I had to squeeze my cheeks together to verify it was still there." The group breaks into laughter. Laughing, William hoists a jug of McGregor's finest. "Fortunately, I have a cure for that." He throws back a swig, then passes it to John Shepler, cheering, "No marse or no, we're getting those toddies." After a respectable pull, John wipes his lips and passes it along. I wonder how old Beebe's doing. Staring into the flames, William mumbles, As do I, friend, as do I. The Bonner family farm, later that evening, Wednesday, February 1st, 1758. Standing at the foot of the bed with a look of deep concern, Berta sighs. He's getting worse. Beebe's eyes are closed and his body is still, save the slight lowering and raising of his chest with each labored breath. The faint sound of a fading breeze with each exhale, the only other sign of life. Berta sits on the edge of the bed, resting her hand gently upon his. With her grandson Jeremiah Jr., or JJ, just outside of earshot by the fire in the front room, she whispers, In all the years we've been together, I've been telling you to shut it, and now I'd give all that I have just to hear you ramble on about something, anything. Flora, who was sitting on a chair beside her, leans in close, wiping her mother's tears. Looking softly into her mother's eyes, she rests a hand on her lap. It'll be fine, Ma. He just needs some rest. What say we sit by the fire with JJ and leave him to sleep? As though she had not heard a word, with a painfully soft, languishing chuckle, she murmurs, Just to hear him ramble on. What's a man to do to get a bloody cup of tea around here? Her eyes fixed on him, she nervously rubs his hand, weeping. Just then, his breathing stops. Jolted, she straightens herself, eyes wide. She squeezes his hand on bated breath. A moment of silence ensues, and his chest heaves as he takes in a huge breath before rolling into a low snore. She gasps, letting out a sigh of relief. Flora stands, taking her mother by the shoulders. We'll be doing him no favours if we wake him. It's been a long day. Come sit with me by the fire. Berta breaks her gaze, glancing at her daughter. A look of distraught exhaustion. Just then, JJ appears at the foot of the bed. Grammy, I'm hungry. Berta wipes her tears and turns to him with a pretend smile. Okay, lad, I'm coming. Still forcing a smile, she turns to Flora. It appears someone else needs me too. Flora smiles warmly. We all need you, Ma. Come, we'll check on him after we've eaten. With that, Berta forces herself to her feet and slowly makes her way into the cabin's front room. As they quietly eat their dinner, Berta keeps a watchful ear, listening to her husband as he softly snores, all the while faking a happy face for JJ. But even at his tender age, he senses something is wrong and whispers, Grammy? She peers down at him. What is it, lad? He looks up at her with his tiny little face. Is Papa gonna get better? She smiles with a reassuring wink. Aye, lad. You ken your Papa. He's too bloody stubborn not to. Now, finish your food like a good lad. After dinner, Berta sits wrapped in a blanket, swaying in her rocking chair in the front room by the fire. Gazing into the flames, she listens as her daughter tells JJ about the time William woke everyone up shooting a deer just outside the cabin, sharing how Papa Beebe ran outside barefooted in his sleep shirt. Berta smiles, adding, And his bloody tallywhacker were pointing straight at the deer. They all chuckle, and Flora continues the story. As she finishes, she looks down to find her son fading off to sleep, his father's faithful dog Johnny snuggled at his side. She half smiles, and a tear slips from her right eye. Seeing he is asleep, she walks over and peeks into the room to check on her father. He is fast asleep. Satisfied, she returns to her son, draping a blanket over he and Johnny. Tucked in, she wraps herself in a blanket and lays down beside him. Early the next morning, Thursday, February 2nd, 1758. Startled, Berta leaps from her rocker. She looks around, struggling to focus. Johnny is standing at the front door barking. Her heart pounding, she looks around the room disoriented and disheveled. Flora rolls to her feet and moves towards the door, gathering herself, gasping. "What in blazes?" Berta sighs. "Oh, I must have fallen asleep." As she reaches the door, Flora turns to her. "Ma, it were late. We all did. Why don't you go check in on Da, and I'll see who's at the door." Before opening the door, Flora pats the palms of her hands to her face and takes a deep breath. When she pulls it open, she finds William Jr. standing outside. With the words "Good morning, lad" on the verge of slipping from her tongue, a horrifying scream pierces the air from the back room. Leaving young Junior on the porch with the door wide open, she dashes to her father's room in a panic, the screaming growing louder and more desperate. As she enters, she finds her mother collapsed to her knees beside the bed, her head resting upon Bibi's chest, weeping uncontrollably. When she sees he is not breathing, her heart sinks. Just then, she feels JJ hugging her leg and she looks down. Wiping the Sandman from his eyes, he asks, "What's the matter? Why is Grammy crying?" Caught off guard, she quickly picks him up and carries him into the front room where Junior is now standing, concern painting his young face. "Is it Bibi?" With her mother's cries consuming the cabin, she quickly gathers herself and with a deep breath, "Aye, lad, the angels came and carried him away last night while he was sleeping." Junior looks at her stone-faced, pausing as he struggles to find the words. "Sorry to be a bother, Miss Flora. Ma sent me to help with the animals, and I just can't believe he's gone." As his head drops in sorrow, she wraps him in a reassuring hug, patting him on the back. "'Tis all right, lad. I understand. But dinna fret. We all must go eventually, and last night was just his time." As a tear slips from his eye, he cries, "It's just, I can't believe he's really gone." From behind them, wrapped in a blanket, JJ sits up, rubbing his eyes, yawning. "Oh, Ma, who's gone?" Flora turns to him. "Oh, good morning, lad." She kneels to embrace him. "It saddens me to have to tell you, but it's your papa." "Papa?" "Aye, love. Last night the angels came and carried him away." "Carried him away? To where?" Rubbing his tiny arms, she attempts to explain. "To heaven, love. He's gone to heaven to be with your Da and Jesus." Softly, "Me Da and Jesus?" "Aye, lad. You were very sick, and Jesus took him home to live with your Da in heaven. So now they can watch over us together." He looks up at her with his tender, innocent eyes. "Is Jesus going to make him better?" "Aye, love. Jesus took all his pain away, and now he'll live forever in our hearts, just like your Da." She places a hand over his heart. "Can you feel him?" He looks down at her hand, then into her bloodshot eyes. "I think so." "Well then, there you go. And now, that's where he'll be forever and ever. You ken why?" He shakes his head. "Because that's how much he loves you." Flora looks up to find her broken-hearted mother standing in the doorway. With tear-covered face, she returns her daughter's gaze, hands over her heart, her head slightly tilted to the right. A proud smile upon her face, Berta whispers, "And there he shall remain forevermore." Junior slowly nods. "Forevermore, Miss Berta." JJ lifts his eyes to him. "Aye, forevermore." With a warm smile, his mother pulls him into another hug. "That's right, lads, forevermore." The wagon train camp near Castleman's Ferry, western side of the Shenandoah River, that same morning, Thursday, February 2nd, 1758. Asleep in his wagon, William shoots upright, throwing off his bearskin, gasping for air. His son John, who was laying with his head at the opposite end of the wagon, shoots upright as well. Startled by his father's abrupt awakening, he gasps, "What happened?" William looks around wide-eyed at the dark confines of the wagon, disheveled and breathing heavily. "A dream! A horrible bloody dream! Sounds more like a nightmare." His father nods. "Aye." Then it hits him. "Good Lord Almighty! What? Baby! What about him?" "Dunna ask me how I can, but I do." "Tell me, da. What about him?" William snaps from his daze and looks him in the eyes. "He's gone." "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "He came to me in my sleep. We were in the field where we first met. He patted me shoulder and, with his fatherly smile, waved goodbye." John pats his father on the leg. "Dunno worry, da. It were just a nightmare. I'm sure he's fine." "Nay, lad, he said goodbye. It were real. I saw him, just as I'm seeing you now. He were right there in front of me. Da, it were a dream. At first, I didn't ken why. Then he hugged me and said he loved me like the son he never had." "Well, of course, you ken how he feels about you. Dunno worry, it weren't real." "Then he asked me to look after his family, that he had to go, and then..." "And then what?" "And then he were gone." "Trust me, it were just a dream, nothing more." William looks around the dark wagon again. "I suppose it had to be, but..."
"My God, da, you scared me half to death."
"Forgive me, young squire. It just felt so real." As his father gathers himself, John gets dressed and climbs out of the wagon. Moments later, William pops his head out to find a light fog covering the area. He climbs down and walks from wagon to wagon, waking the rest of the crew from their slumber. Meanwhile, John is stoking a campfire and putting on a kettle of water for coffee. Of the 80 miles they need to cover to get to the harbor, they had barely covered a quarter of it their first day. Fortunately, even if that is all the ground they cover over each of the next 3 days, they will still arrive well ahead of schedule. As the crew warm themselves around the fire with hot cups of coffee, a man approaches on horseback.
"A fine Thursday morning to you, gents."
They gesture with their cups, and William replies,
"Top of the morn. I'm guessing you gents are waiting to cross."
"Indeed we are.
Might you be the man to help us across?" "That I be. David Castleman, at your service."
As the man dismounts, William walks over to properly introduce himself.
"William Bruce Albin. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Castleman."
The man shakes his hand.
"'Tis a pleasure, sir. Give me a few minutes to set up, and we'll start ferrying you gents across. For a reasonable fare, of course."
William shakes his hand firmly.
"Of course. Thank you, Mr. Castleman. We're much obliged."
Moments later, Castleman is joined by 2 more men, and together they lower the ramp of the ferry resting at the water's edge. The ferry itself is 10 feet wide and twice as long, made sturdily of local timbers. It sits atop what William guesses are poplar poles 18 inches in diameter. At each end of the flatbed ferry, the barge, are ramps which lower to the shore for passengers and their cargo to board and disembark on either side of the river. Both sides of the ferry are lined with 4-foot-high wooden railings and 2 sizable ropes stretching across the river on the upcurrent side of the barge, each firmly anchored on opposite sides of the river. One rope holds the barge in place with pulley wheels that guide the ferry back and forth across the river, while the other is used to hand pull it from one side to the other. Seeing they are moments away from crossing, the weary travelers douse their fire and ready themselves to move out, each climbing into their respective wagons, awaiting instructions. When the ferrymen are ready, they wait for William to pull his wagon onto the ferry. With one ferryman standing at each end of the barge, Mr. Castleman guides William aboard from the center of the barge.
"You're looking good. Easy, easy. Ease her on, friend. Nice and slow."
William eases his wagon up and over the ramp, pulling forward and onto the ferry, his horse, tied to the wagon, following close behind.
"That's good. Keep her coming. Almost there." "Halt!"
William stops and ties off the brake as Mr. Castleman walks over.
"You can ride up there if you want to, but we'll get across faster if you lend us a hand."
William jumps down and walks up to Mr. Castleman, handing him a pouch. "This should cover the lot of us." Castleman peeks inside.
"Thank you kindly, sir."
He closes the pouch with a satisfied grin, then slings it from a sash over his shoulder. With the pouch safely secure, he reaches down and takes a hold of the pull rope, signaling his men. Following their lead, William takes a hold of the rope and begins tugging in unison with the ferryman. Slowly but surely, the ferry eases from the shore and makes its way across the Shenandoah. As they pull, William peers at Castleman.
"She moves along pretty good."
Castleman nods.
"Aye, she's a pretty steady craft. Does the job rather nicely, don't you think?"
William chuckles.
"Aye, and thank God for it. I'd hate to cross without her."
Castleman laughs.
"Aye, that would be no bloody fun at all. Damned near impossible, I'd say."
When they reach the far side, the barge gently slips to the shore, and Mr. Castleman's mates quickly drop the ramp, securing the ferry with ropes lashed to two large poles sticking up from the shoreline. Once secure, Castleman signals William to disembark. William nods and slowly eases his wagon over the ramp and safely onto shore, the entire process taking about 15 or so minutes. Then, as quickly as he disembarked, the ferrymen pull the ferry back to the other side. With his wagon pulled forward and parked, William mounts his steed and rides down to the shoreline to watch as they repeat the process 4 more times. As each wagon comes ashore, it is pulled forward and parked. With everyone on the eastern side, William makes his way to the front of the line, stopping at each wagon to instruct his men before moving out.
"James, from what I can see, the roads on this side are no better, so slow and steady."
James nods.
"Slow and steady it be, brother. Our goal for today is Leesburg, about 20 miles east of here. So, if you need anything, fire off a shot. Understood?"
James gives him a 2-fingered salute, laughing.
"Aye, Captain."
William smiles and shakes his head.
"Safe travels."
Riding forward, he stops briefly at each wagon, ensuring his entire crew understands the plan. With his horse tied off, he climbs on his wagon and leads the train east to Leesburg. The Bonner Farm, later that morning. While the Bonners mourn in the cabin, Junior makes his way to their barn to tend to their animals. After feeding and watering them, he milks the cow and retrieves the fresh eggs from the coop, then carries it all into the cabin. After struggling to set the milk can on the floor, he wrangles the basket of eggs from his left arm and places it on the table.
"I brushed the horses, fed the animals, and brought in the milk and eggs. Is there anything else I can help you with, Miss Flora?"
Looking up from the table, she reaches out a hand.
"If it is no too much to ask, would you kindly deliver this note to the Reverend for me?"
He takes the note and stuffs it into his trousers.
"Gladly, Miss Flora. Might there be anything else?" "Nay, lad, that's all for now. And thank you. You're a good lad, Junior. Just like your da."
"Thank you, Miss Flora, but we're family, and helping's what families are for, right?"
"Aye, lad, and you've been a big help. Thank you, lad. You're welcome."
He pauses.
"Miss Flora, what is it, love? Me and me family will be praying for you."
Her shoulders drop and she sighs.
"Thank you. Well, I reckon I'll be going now. Goodbye, Jeremiah."
And although she is nowhere to be seen, he adds,
Goodbye, Miss Berta. As he turns for the door, Johnny runs up, begging for attention. Before exiting, he kneels, petting him around his ears and head. Yeah, that's a good boy. As he exits, she walks to the door and shouts, Be sure to thank your ma and send her a love. Dashing across the yard towards the Reverends, he shouts, I will, Miss Flora. Leesburg, Loudoun County, Virginia Colony. Later that afternoon, Thursday, February 2nd, 1758. In just a fraction of the time it took to cover roughly the same distance their first day, just 5 hours, William's wagon train arrives in Leesburg. The governmental seat of Loudoun County, Leesburg, Virginia, was established in 1740 and named after Colonel Thomas Lee, an ancestor of Civil War General Robert E. Lee. Colonel Lee was a prominent figure in Virginia, having been involved in colonial politics since 1710 when he became the resident manager of Virginia's Northern Neck Proprietary for Lady Catherine Fairfax. Later in life, Lee became a prominent landowner, inheriting large swaths in Northumberland and Charles County upon his father's death. Later still, he acquired additional holdings in Arlington, Fairfax, Prince William, and Loudoun counties, where he developed tobacco plantations. For 10 years, from 1723 to 1733, he served in Virginia's House of Burgesses. Later, from 1733 to 1750, he served as consul of the Virginia colony, as well as governor of Virginia from 1749 to 1750. After the White House burns to the ground in 1814 during the War of 1812, Leesburg serves as the temporary seat of the United States government. It also played a prominent role in the Civil War, during which it changed hands on several occasions. Considering they had made such great time, William opts to press onward. After grabbing a bite to eat at the local tavern, he and his crew procure some supplies, load their wagons, and push eastward along the Potomac River through the Northern Neck Proprietary, land owned by none other than Thomas the Sixth Lord Fairfax. After covering another 10 miles, they start to lose daylight. Thinking better of it, William finds a good spot to stop and set up camp. With his team exhausted and having made far better time than expected, he opts to stay at that camp for a few days to allow his men and their sore bodies some much-needed rest. Once refreshed, they will finish the last leg of their journey the following Monday. The Alban Farm, later that evening, Thursday, February 2nd, 1758. After delivering Flora's letter to the Reverend, Junior finally makes his way home and shares the news of Beebe's passing. Mary, who is standing near the dining table, pulls out a chair and plops down like a sack of grain. My God! Poor Bertha! Poor Flora! I did not realize he were that sick. In fact, I half expected him to be over here, checking on us. Junior chuckles. I imagined him opening the door this morning, barking, What? You think I'm no capable of milking me own cow? She giggles. That sounds just like him. I kenned something were wrong when Miss Flora left me standing on the porch. Mary reaches over and strokes his hair. I'm sorry you had to be there for that, but I'm glad you were. And they'll be needing a whole lot more help in the coming days. Are you up for it? No to worry, Ma. I'll check on him every day till Da gets back. Mary tousles his hair, then kisses him on the forehead. Thank you, young squire. You're a good lad, just like your Da.